Well, XDefiant is getting shut down. For those who don't know, XDefiant was supposed to be this Call of Duty like game where it was pretty much Ubisoft's Call of Duty. And a lot of people who worked on Call of Duty in the past, like Mark Rubin, worked on this project and on this game. And a lot of people were hoping that this might finally be some needed competition for Call of Duty. Because right now, when it comes to the kind of shooter space, Battlefield has been kind of dormant since 2042, and 2042 wasn't great at all. It was a buggy mess when it came out, and generally the game itself wasn't great. There hasn't, in my opinion, been a really good Battlefield game since Battlefield 4, and for another franchise, Halo Infinite came out. Didn't have a lot of content, and now that they do finally have content, people don't aren't really playing the game anymore. So really, when it comes to the shooter space, the first person shooter space, Call of Duty kind of reigns supreme. So XDefiant was kind of seen as this breath of fresh air because people were hoping, hey, this game kind of gave us that Black Ops 2 vibe of Call of Duty. The Call of Duty back in the seventh generation of console, where there was no skill based matchmaking, and the game just seemed like a fun arcade shooter. And a lot of people had high hopes. I remember when it came out, X Defiant, the numbers were pretty high. And I thought, hey, this might be it. This might be an actual competitor to Call of Duty. Well, unfortunately today, Ubisoft announced they're shutting it down. So a letter written by Mark Rubin, the executive producer of XDefiant, recently released a message. Hello, XDefiant fans. I am unfortunately here today to announce that XDefiant will be shutting down. Starting today, December 3rd, 2024, new downloads and players registration will no longer be available. We will still release our Season 3 content in the near future, exact date TBD. The servers will remain active until June 3rd, 2025. For those who purchased the Ultimate Founders Pack, you will receive a full refund. Players who made any purchases within the last 30 days will also be fully refunded. Those refunds should happen automatically within 8 weeks of today, and you can find more details on our official website, xdefiant.com. A few years ago, Ubisoft and the San Francisco dev team embarked on a bold adventure to develop a new arcade shooter called XDefiant. It was, from the start, an incredible challenge. Not only were we trying to shake up the genre by removing skill-based matchmaking while bringing back a more old-school arcade shooter experience, but we were also diving into the high-risk, high-reward realm of free-to-play. And for that, I want to applaud not only the dev team, but also Ubisoft leadership for taking the chance. Free-to-play in particular is a long journey. Many free-to-play games take a long time to find their footing and become profitable. It is a long journey that Ubisoft and the team working on the game were prepared to make until very recently. But unfortunately, the journey became too much to sensibly continue. I am of course heartbroken to have to be writing this post. Yes, this game has been a personal passion for me for years, and yes, I know that not all the challenges lead to victory, but I also want to recognize all the developers who are being affected by this closure. Each and every one of them is a real person with a real life separate from our own, and they have all put so much of their own passion into making this game. And I hope that they can be proud of what they did achieve. I know that I will always be proud and grateful to have worked with such a great team, a team that really punched above its weight class. And what they achieved is truly remarkable. The early response from players when XDefiant launched was amazing. We broke internal records for the fastest game to surpass 5 million users, and in the end we had over 15 million players play our game. This is something to be extremely proud of, especially considering how tough this genre is. So thank you to all the developers who put their passion into making the game. If there's one thing I hope we can all take away from this experience, it's the importance of open, honest communications between developers and players. This player-first mentality, along with a respectful, non-toxic conversation between developers and players, has been one of the standout differences that made XDefiant so special. From my very first post about XDefiant, this was the vision I wanted to champion, and I hope it leaves a positive mark on how the game industry treats its player and communities. To our players, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I want to express my deepest gratitude for the incredible community that has grown around XDefiant. Your passion, creativity, and dedication have inspired us every step of the way. With the utmost of love and respect, Mark Rubin, Executive Producer, XDefiant. So yeah, that was his message on XDefiant getting shut down. I have a lot to say about this message. First of all, if XDefiant was doing so well at like first, like they said they had what 5 million players in the first day, and they even at one point reached up to 15 million players. And just because it's slowing down now, they decide, hey, let's just shut it down. Let's completely shut it down. Mind you, this game wasn't receiving a whole lot of content and enough content to really kind of justify continue playing the game, especially in this market where these live service games they need to constantly have content to keep people like engaged with the game. There wasn't a lot in XDefiant to really keep people playing. Second of all, yes, it was an arcade shooter, but it was a hero shooter also. And I know I mentioned this before. Hero shooters, I'm tired of them. I'm tired of hero shooters. No more hero shooters, please. Like, genuinely, there are probably one of my least favorite genre of shooters ever. And all I wanted was this game just to be Call of Duty Black Ops 2. I just wanted this game to be another version of Black Ops 2 where, you know, there was no kind of BS hero shooter kind of mechanic where you have ultimate skills and all this crap that they like to put in these games. And unfortunately, this game did. That was one of the reasons why I stopped playing it, because I really don't like hero shooters. I'm not a huge fan of them at all. And because of that, I left the game. And I know a lot of people, they try to stick with the game, but there wasn't enough content to really justify continuing it. But here's the stupid thing. It's only been a year and they decide to shut it down now. Like, why don't you continue it? Like, yeah, maybe now, maybe during the initial launch it was great, and then a little bit after that it wasn't great, but it hasn't even been a full year since this game came out. I'm pretty sure this game came out what, April 2024, and it's like this game barely had a chance to actually make like waves. It had barely had a chance to actually do well. Look at Fortnite. Fortnite, remember, people always act like Fortnite was a immediate success when it came out. No, remember, Fortnite was originally this kind of PvE game, and I remember no one really cared about it when it came out. It was only until they released the Battle Royale mode that was when Fortnite became like a big thing and popped off and became one of the biggest games ever. Now, I'm not saying XDefiant need a Battle Royale mode, but I'm saying they should have continued working on the game and give the players what they want and continue to just overall make the game better. And maybe it could have saved the game and allowed players to come back and play more. And it's crazy because remember, this game at launch had over 5 million players. If the fact you were able to even reach that amount, something that other games will never even reach that amount. Look at another failed games that came out this year, Concord. Concord, if you look at Steam like player base, I think at most it had like 2,000 players, which is horrible for a brand new shooter. And I get it, Concord was $40, XDefiant was free to play, but XDefiant 5 million compared to, let's say, 5,000 on for Concord, because we'll include PlayStation numbers. That's still such a huge difference. And the fact that these games both are getting shut down the same year XDefiant's getting shut down next year, but very close to each other, even though XDefiant was a much, much better game than Concord, is absolutely crazy. This is Ubisoft for you. If it doesn't succeed at first, throw it away. Which is crazy because this did succeed at first. Ubisoft literally was talking about how great this game was doing in terms of player base wise and how they were happy with it. And now, not even a year after the game launched, they're like, you know what? We gotta shut it down. Yeah, let's shut it down. Like, Ubisoft is such a garbage company. Absolutely one of the worst gaming companies right now. Generally, all they do is release these half-assed games and then cry when nobody plays them. Like, release a complete game that's actually good from start to finish, and maybe Ubisoft, maybe people will start playing your game. But no, all they like focus on is how much monetization we can get out of a game. They constantly shove microtransaction and all this BS in our faces and hope that we spend money on it. And then when people don't buy the shit because, one, the game itself isn't even good. XDefiant was promising at first, but Ubisoft screwed it up by not giving it the attention that it needed. And Ubisoft is also the same developers that put tons of microtransactions in their single player games. And they cry, "Oh, why are we not doing so well? Why are the gamers not buying our games?" And it's like, because your games just suck. Like, genuinely. Your best game, Prince of Persia, the new one that came out this year, which I will say was generally a good game. Ubisoft was disappointed in it. You know, they weren't happy with it. And I believe they shut down the studio, which is crazy. But we're going to get our 15th million Assassin's Creed game, a franchise which hasn't been good in the last 10 years. Actually, I thought Origins was pretty good. But besides that, a mediocre tier franchise that's been shoved with the most like random microtransaction crap in our face and just generally not a good experience. Like, dude, the amount of microtransactions that are in an Assassin's Creed game is crazy, especially when they're supposed to be a single player game. Like, I already gave you my $60 to $70, but you want to shove more microtransactions in my face. You want me to pay to level up XP, which, by the way, these games are a grind because Ubisoft wants you to buy fucking microtransactions for their game. They don't want you to actually they just want you to spend more money. That's how they do it. They just want to make you spend money. And that's the reason why Ubisoft isn't doing as well, because the consumer know that all that Ubisoft wants out of them is just to constantly give them money. And I get it. Businesses have to make money. But the way Ubisoft is doing it is horrible. You know, you see other developers giving you great games for the same price you are paying for a Ubisoft game. Remember, Star Wars Outlaw is more expensive than Black Myth Wukong, than Astrobot, than a lot of other games that came out this year that were great. It's the same price as Seven Rebirth, Metaphor, and a bunch of other great games. Are you telling me that with a bunch of good games out right now that I will be picking a Ubisoft slop when, by the way, it's going to be a grindy mess because they want me to spend money to get an XP boost, even though it's a single player game? This should not be a thing in a single player game. Well, you have developers like Atlas releasing bangers like Metaphor ReFantasio, releasing Persona 3 Reload, releasing SMT5 Vengeance. Then you have Square Enix with 7 Rebirth, an amazing game. You have Astrobot, which was $50. And honestly, like, Astrobot is such a great game. And, you know, sure, there is like the $10 digital deluxe edition pack, but it's still cheaper than Star Wars Outlaw. And that's probably the most you have to spend on that game. Unlike Ubisoft, that's like, let's release mid after mid, and let's also shove microtransactions in our face. Like, this is why Ubisoft, generally no one likes it. I don't know anyone who unironically gets extremely excited for a Ubisoft game anymore. Like, it's Ubisoft, it's slop. That's why they're called Ubislop. Like, generally, their games are just not that fun. Like, I used to really like the Far Cry series, but Far Cry now is just slop, you know? After the success of Far Cry 3, they just kept on doing it over again. And sure, I liked Far Cry 4 and 5, but 6, I couldn't even, I barely played that game, and I thought it was, mid. Like all of the modern Ubisoft games. And when they do have something good, like initially XDefiant when it came out, they just dropped it, and now they're acting surprised that the game didn't do well. Because you guys weren't giving the game the content it needed. Instead, you guys were making more mid. Like, why, what's that game they have, Skull and Bones? It's kind of crazy that Skull and Bones is still being continued, but XDefiant wasn't. When Skull of Bones was a flop from the get-go. Like, I genuinely don't think anyone was looking forward to that game. XDefiant had a lot of hype behind it, but Skull of Bones, or I think it's Skull and Bones, not Skull of Bones, but Skull and Bones was continued? Like, come on, Ubisoft. Like, generally, why? And I get it. I believe there's some reason why they got money from, I believe, Singapore to kind of make the game, and they can't just, they couldn't just cancel the game because they took loans out for it. I think it was from Singapore. I'm not 100% sure what country, but I know some country did give Ubisoft money to kind of make the game or to help with the development. But it just shows Ubisoft just doesn't understand how to make a good game compared to a bunch of other publishers like Sega, uh, Square Enix, Sony, PlayStation, Nintendo. Say what you want about what PlayStation did with Concord. At least they have released good games this year. They released Helldivers 2. They released Astrobot. Those games. They released Stellar Blade. Yes, I know they don't own the developer or anything, but that was a great game. Rise of Ronin was a great game. And you have Ubisoft over here that when they do release good games like Prince of Persia, they're like, oh, we're not happy with it. But then they cry when a game like Star Wars Outlaw fails because that game is just trash, and they just want to constantly shove money wants us to give them our money for no reason, for minimum effort. They want to take our dollars, our money, our hard-earned cash, just so they can continue giving us slop. And that's the reason why no one's buying them anymore. The consumers understand. They aren't stupid. The consumers aren't just going to buy everything you throw at them, Ubisoft. They want good games. If a game is good, generally, in my opinion, 9 times out of 10, it will sell. Sure, there are the exceptions of games that don't do that well, but are great, like Titanfall 2. But those are the exception. And Titanfall 2 didn't do well. One of the main reasons was because EA put it right between Call of Duty and Battlefield, the big two of first-person shooters. That wasn't going to do well. And that's the case with a lot of these great games that don't do well. It's because they are put in a busy schedule when there's bigger games that are coming out around then, and a lot of people aren't going to play them. But you can't say that about most Ubisoft games because their big games are just mediocre. They're just slop. And that's why they hit the bargain bin a couple months after they're released. You know how many times a Ubisoft game would come out, let's say the summer, and then Black Friday, $20. Or a year later, $20. You look at other developers and their games, and sure, they might hit 30 at the lowest, but Ubisoft games are known for hitting the bargain bin faster. And it just really shows how garbage of a company modern Ubisoft is. Ubisoft is generally one of the worst publishers in gaming. And this XDefiant situation is just sad. And, it's unfortunate that a game that could have potentially become great was shut down before it really had a chance to really do something. Before it had a chance to become great, it was shut down, and, it was just missed potential. But that's all I have for today. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.